Господин Чуваев, ваше кресло...
Mr. Chuaev, your chair is right over here.
Добрый день, дорогие коллеги.
Well, good afternoon, everyone. It is a pleasure to have you with us at this panel discussion dedicated to unlocking Russia's potential in the global renewables industry. We've had 3 already, and this is the fourth session in a row. And this tradition was started by Alexei Texler and Jures Alferov. And since the inception, we've been meeting on an annual basis to review innovations and accomplishments. And this panel has been a foundation, a basis for international cooperation, both science-wise and production-wise. And today we have a special task. We would like to use this opportunity to understand the role Russia can play in the global industry. Well, we had never talked about that, but I guess the time is good for us to do that. But before we get started, I would like to honor a tradition of this panel. We usually give prizes to people who have contributed to the renewables industry, and we use books dedicated to renewables. And 2 weeks ago there was an exhibition in Brussels, and Russian technologies were presented there. It was Europe's largest exhibition dedicated to technologies. The Triumph of Sun, written by Wolfgang Pfalz, one of the gurus of renewables energy, wrote it. Well, you might remember that a year ago we presented Mr. Amin with a book, and it gives me great pleasure to ask Mr. Sigov, member of the Russian Academy, to give this book as prizes to 2 outstanding figures in the Russian energy industry: Anatoly Chubais, ladies and gentlemen, and Alexei Texler. Something inaudible, no mic, no translation. Yes, right over here, please. Well, you know, these days in Russia has a number of serious research groups in Moscow, St. Pete, and other regions. They pursue a variety of aspects of solar energy, transmission of solar energy to the Earth, solar generation, etc. So you two are prominent figures. So I hope that this book will help you further strive for further accomplishments and help us all. Thank you so much. Oh, thank you, thank you. Thank you very much indeed, Alexander. Well, I don't know. Do we really need to introduce the panelists? Well, formalities need to be observed, of course, but, well, we don't have people who dropped in by chance. Ladies and gentlemen, Alexei Texler, First Deputy Minister of Energy of the Russian Federation. Anatoly Chubais, Chairman of the Executive Board, Rosnano Corporation, Alexander Korchagin, Rosatom, Charles Hendry, Chairman and co-founder of Eurasia Partners Limited and Director, Head of Future Energy, London Power Corporation, former Minister of State for Energy. Thank you so much for being with us today. He came here straight from the meeting of Britain's Conservative Party. I personally checked your chair. There is nothing smeared on it, so rest assured that it's safe. Igor Shachrai, General Director, Havel, and the leader of our solar energy, and Alexander Chuvaev, Executive Vice President and Head of the Russia Division for Corporation. And I would now like to give the floor to Alexei Texler. And Mr. Texler, would you please describe the situation, the changes that have taken place since we last met? And a year ago, we said that there will be an increase of capacity. Has that indeed taken place? Has that happened? And have we managed to realize the plans we talked about last year? What are our future plans in terms of renewables energy? Yes, thank you, esteemed colleagues. Indeed, every year, we talk about prospects of renewables every year in this country, and I think, we've run out of prospects, because I would like to say that we now in the development phase. We've talked about this repeatedly, so I'm not going to go into every detail, but in terms of scope, there has been quite a growth. Last year we introduced roughly 100 MW worth of capacity. I'm talking about the Ulyanovsk Oblast together with Rosnano and Fortin. This last January we introduced a lot of new capacity, but we decided to attribute that to last year. This year we expect a little more than 300 MW, of which 1/3 will be wind and 2/3 will be solar. The 65 MW have already been introduced, solar stations, so it's no hard work to calculate that until the end of this year we will have to install north of 200 MW, but the companies tend to update their plans, but that hardly matters because this is what is going to be installed in the near future. Let me remind you that this year we completed the selection of last offtake. The offtake is going to be 5.4 of renewables so 1.8 MW goes for sun and 3.3 goes to wind. That happened, and this capacity is going to be installed and introduced. There is no doubt about that. I have a lot of colleagues and friends together with me on stage today. They will give you more details because their companies actually work on that, and it is their company's commitment. It's not a question about the present or the near future. All people present here will echo me when I say that we are concerned about the future. That is the most important thing we would like to talk about. I mean, the program of support. Well, it's been extended. The question is, what is the scope if that is going to take place indeed? That should be the most interesting discussion, and people will touch upon it. I trust we haven't been idle, and indeed we are nearing the completion of the Novocheboksarsky plant, which you're going to hear about in greater detail. Well, new product slates have been introduced, reversible solar panels, and we can see the very positive dynamics, additional capacity from every cell of every panel, and a performance index of ready-to-use panels. That's the reality. That's what's been happening primarily that's Rosatom and Rosnano with Fortnum, and naturally the colleagues have moved on to investment decisions, in terms of rolling out of their operational capacity. The task is to pursue localization as well. And so everything is actually happens, and this is a great pleasure indeed. So, at present, there is no doubt whatsoever that all our plans will be put into reality and realized. In addition, there is a variety of projects for the retail market, for remote and isolated areas, solar projects, wind projects, this way or that. A variety of regions in eastern Siberia and the Far East. Local folks are now paying great attention to those projects. There are dozens of them, and a great number of those projects is pursued in tiny neighborhoods in remote, local, rural areas. This last Thursday, this coming Thursday, if memory serves, we are going to review wind generation draft law, and that is yet another element in terms of our work, pursuing not just large-scale wholesale generation, but smaller generation capacity for remote neighborhoods, and the electricity will be sold to neighborhoods at discount rates. In terms of future, I'm here to tell you that we are going to talk about that at the ministry and with the government. All the parties concerned are getting prepared. There is a position, and we know it, we understand it. Heat generators, and not just them. A variety of people would like to have the DPM support program, and they would like some load to be removed from them. So there is a variety of companies pursuing that in an active manner. They think that support should go on. Well, I'm going to highlight my point of view, my stance. The ministry is yet to finalize its official position, and it will be up to the minister. But I personally think that the support program in an updated format should exist, and we must not forget our initial goals and tasks set for the program. Definitely, it's not a matter of extra capacity. But if the plans mentioned in the presidential order in respect of economic growth, if they are to be realized, that should require additional capacity in terms of electric power. Well, I'm not talking about efficient generation we have in the heat sector. So we are going to grow by 4% year in, year out, and so additional demand for generation should become evident by mid-2020s, and there will be a great call for the support program. But that's not what we are going to talk about. But what's important is that the program was supposed to stimulate development of in-house domestic competencies. Have we attained the goal? I don't think so. Are we going to be able to? Well, it will be hard, I think, and that is why the program requires some elaboration with due account of the reality. Firstly, we see that in Russia there has been a lot of reduction of unit capex for wind, less 35% last year, less 35% for sun. I remember a while ago it was 155 million rubles for 1 MW for wind. And now it's north of 67. Look what a great reduction that is. And well, the same thing is relevant for wind. So I think the program should incorporate some additional ambitious tasks and goals following the overall logic of the offtake and the global trends in terms of reduction of cost of construction of new capacity, export potential. That should be a part of the program too, I say, because consumers say that they are sort of reluctant to deal with additional load. And well, that's quite understandable. What is expert opens ways for distribution of the load between internal and international markets. That's true too. And these days we have no such parameters. Well, I reviewed a report a while ago and talked to some colleagues about it. If we look about net present value of electricity, well, and compare it with the data for Europe, where the conditions are comparable in terms of solar generation, for instance, then we'll see that in Russia the cost is higher because, well, because money is more expensive here. It's not the fault of energy folks. There's a variety of reasons for that. Our projects we pursue is because the recovery rate is lower in this country. We need to look into that. We need to work on that. There are technical solutions for that. We could use trackers. We could use we could boost the performance of our solar panels because, well, these days, well, the final price of electricity is higher. That we need to look into too. That is what we need to work on too. And we need to turn to the sun, so to speak. We need to turn to the consumers, if you know what I mean, and that will help electricity to become comparable with electricity in Western Europe. And our consumers are quite entitled to raise that question. That it would only be fair, I think. So taking these things into account, I'm here to tell you that we need to keep working on our competences. But in addition to that, we need to keep working on the development of technologies, and it would only be fair to keep setting new tasks and associated with a sustainable support of the effort, not just DPM via DPM renewables. That would be true too. because that makes our projects more expensive. Hi. Yeah, so the task is wider. We need to keep pursuing it, keep reducing the capex, and keep develop our technology potential and operational capacity. So in the end of the day, if we can make both ends meet or become closer to each other, then I think we could fairly expect some certain support of those projects. My personal point of view is that that is well worthwhile. Well, thank you so very much indeed. Before we get further along the agenda, I would like to ask you to put up some slides. We have European countries here with their respective mechanisms and their tariffs. You see, there are feed-in tariffs, feed-in premiums, and we have this support mechanism. It's been a splendid asset, but that's the only asset these days. And I would like to ask the speakers to take, here you can see another slide with data from Germany. This demonstrates and illustrates how the Germans constructed solar farms when the conditions of war and environment was least favorable, and the price kept dropping as they went on. So it's very informative. I would like to ask my second question to Alexei Leonidovich. In a while there is going to be a resolution. It's on the agenda now. In your opinion, which mechanism is the most preferable for support of large projects in Mother Russia? DPMV or something else? Over to you.
I believe I partially answered this question. I think that the scope of measures should be sufficient, with clearly understandable obligations and targeted KPIs for the society to develop this generation. I mean the capacities, I mean also the technology, experts, I mean the overall capacity to have the whole scope of energy solution for the state that are needed right now, today, across the regions of the nation. If we don't do that, we will not be developing the huge territory of Russia, and this should be done. So I believe that renewable power supply contracts, preferential rates, supporting technology, supporting research and development and scientific solutions, we need a full scope of support measures. It should be there. In this case, I focus on the following. We compete within the global energy balance so that Russia continues to be the leading energy power. We will keep developing our hydrocarbons. We will further extend our power generation capacities, innovative technology solutions in power generation, and of course renewables. Renewables are one of the key factors today, at least what the figures say today. It's clear for everyone that in terms of commissioning of capacities, renewables from the end of 2014 exceed the dynamics shown by traditional power generation. And no matter how hard the fluctuation of hydrocarbons is, this is indeed a clear trend. We should be doing that. Speaking of the balance of interests, this should be taken into account. It should be understood that consumers, and by consumers I mean the industry in the first place, we have state regulation of pricing for civil population, for individuals. I believe we should have someone to speak representing the industry. We should clearly understand the goals we are setting in front of us, and we are supporting at the state level these projects. Right, now we'll switch over to technology, as mentioned by you. Anatoly Borisovich, this question goes to you. Here you are represented quite largely. Actually, I suggest that we should refer to Rusnanya as Rusneni. We have a wind project and another renewable project. In your opinion, which technologies are considered to be breakthrough technologies? Unlike China, we will not be able to commission several gigawatts within a short period of time. I believe our approach should be based on technology to mark a milestone in global energy. Before taking your question, I would like to say a few words commenting on Alexei Leonidovich's words. I mostly agree. Over the year, the whole situation might change. But the real hardware is not yet there. But this time it was really implemented both for solar and wind power. The industry is boring now. About 2 years ago, some people would say, "What? Wind power? We only have wind storing in our pockets." And now this is in the past. That situation is in the past. Wind power is out there. It was set out as one of the priorities by the president. This is a huge result. The Minister of Energy, the Industry of Commerce, there are dozens of laws and bylaws, and that whole machine does work. No matter how strange that might sound, the price dropped from 150 to 65. This is a huge competitive advantage. This is an impressive result. Can you please name any other tech-related cluster in Russia created within the last year? At least one. Please name at least one. I believe this is a crucial result that really took place before us. I have a more concerning outlook. If it's not 5.4, 5.3, 5.4, there is no doubt that such capacities will be built. We can clearly see that from our projects, from those of our colleagues. But next, this is what I would call an impending threat. In these months, right now, we will find out whether it will be implemented or not. If it turns out to be so, it believes that that would be a waste of effort. If it so happens, everything that happens by 2024, everything will die after 2024. And this kind of scenario is pretty feasible. Some agencies, some bodies are trying to implement this specific scenario without having a clear understanding of the situation. I am talking about the struggle referred to as DPM, Renewable Power Supply Contract 2. We carried out a lot of work. We relied on our own and external experts. How much of wind and renewable power do we really need here in Russia? Let's put the question like this. We should not be trying to achieve the 30% level of Germany. We can be set a limit to 5 megawatts. Actually not. What is needed from our point of view? This will be reflected in the formula. We have need a balance, a self-reproducing cluster having an export potential, including generation, industry, science, and education. These 4 components or pillars, if they're not self-sustainable, if they're not self-developing, if we no longer have at least one of them, and the crucial one is science here, it turns out that Russia will not have a tech cluster. Following 2024, if an adequate solution is not taken regarding DPM2, Renewable Power Supply Contract 2, all renewable energy sources will gradually die down in Russia. And the role of Russia as a leading energy power after 2024 might be lost. This is not something abstract. This is not a slogan. This is a real scenario that might really take place. What do we need to do? Generation, industry, science, and education. These are the four pillars. These are the parameters mentioned. Before we can clearly see the generation parameters, those of the industry, those of the scientific world, academia, and education. In order for them to carry on living, we need more capacities being commissioned, as we should. We made some calculations, we crunched some numbers. Sorry for taking up that much time. Probably the moderator will tell that. We'll never interrupt you. I want you to be just on the safe side. And these are not simply words. This is the real thing. In order for science and industry to develop after 2024, when at least we need to have 10,000 megawatts. If it's less than that, we will be running huge risks. And science is the most vulnerable one of these four pillars. Now let's take a closer look at technology. What is the essence of the tech-related strategy? Igor Shakray will provide a detailed outlook. And step number one, it is about wind and solar. No, let's not make any illusions. A full-fledged energy transit, a full-fledged energy transfer. Industries are developing for decades, for 20 years, for 30 years. This cannot happen overnight. We are thankful to the businesses, to the partners. This is step number one. Step number two, the creation of a center with a tech upgrade. Mr. Shakray is going to provide a more detailed outlook. We built a thin film production technology in St. Petersburg, and now we're able to produce photovoltaic panels with an efficiency rate of 22%. Next step, experts. Finally, they made it to the export market. This is very commendable. This is a great result. What would the next step be? Of course, this is a flow of about 5 to 7% of the sales volume for research and development. That will be able to ensure the development of technology, thus reaching world leadership levels. This is the consequence. I could be talking more about infrastructure, perovskite materials, and other advantages. I would like to highlight the following. In order for this baby, for this newborn baby, not to be choked during the night, and we have dozens of such examples, but very few people notice that. In order to avoid that, in the upcoming months, right now, it takes the right decision regarding the volumes, the capacities, for the Renewable Power Supply Contract 2 with a share of renewables not less than 10,000 megawatts. I would like to give the floor to Mr. Shakray. Please tell us, how did it happen? 8 to 22%, actually 22.7%. Is that right? Indeed, as mentioned by Anatoly Borisovich, a huge effort has been undertaken. We started off from thin film technology. The capacity is 290 watts, a cell of 60 cells. We do both modules and cells. The average capacity of a module is plus 8% to the power we had planned. Thus, based on this, based on other technical improvements, the capacity of the Novocheboksk production facility is 180 megawatts, based on the annual equivalent. We expect to implement the busbar technology, we will be producing a model with a dual side module with 72 cells. It will additionally produce energy 10 to 30%. This holds true for modules with a power not less than 380 watts. For those of you who know such a system, this is a breakthrough result, I would put it like that. We started analyzing the production of modules based on half cells. This reduces the current and brings in additional advantages. This all, as a result, has lower costs for consumers. The capex were about 1,000 per kilowatt. For new farms for 2020, 2021, and further on, 2022 as well, these farms will be based with a capex of 1.5 less expensive compared to the initial one. This ratio will be lower. We now have a very intense cost-cutting program. The market is highly competitive. I mean the exports market in the first place. So we take into account every single penny we might save. That ends up embedded in our costs. Apart from the modules, we reached additional effects. We have a joint project. We have better advanced telemetry. The dispatcher, by bypassing dispatchers within the company in charge of operations of those parks, of those farms, they are able to modify the production capacity of this farm, of this park, and it also has multiple other advantages. This is a test pilot model. In the Republic of Bashkiria, the Russian Federation, we conducted pilot tests, and we'll take a look at its scale up in the midterm. I believe for solar park, solar farm management, this product will be in high demand. Jointly with SAFT, a French company, we will install a rechargeable battery station of a relatively high capacity. Thus, we will find a solution to the following problem. The solar power is highly dependent on the climatic conditions, on the diurnal and nocturnal cycles, clouds, and other climatic conditions. We want to give the market dispatcher the capacity to manage the station, even if its capacity goes down, so that you have a buffer of 10 to 20% of the station capacity. Within 30 minutes, within an hour, or within 1.5 hours, you will be able to manage the output of the station, thus covering the power drops. This will be a huge step forward in terms of solar energy development. This system will be a breakthrough solution. I believe in the first quarter of 2019, it will be running in test mode in the Republic of Altai, the Russian Federation. That's why I believe in terms of advanced technologies on the alternative renewable energy sources, such solutions are very promising. And these technologies will facilitate the operation of such facilities. This is what the situation looks like today. Thank you. You were quite modest to describe your achievements, and this should be noted. No one else made a breakthrough like that. The efficiency is about 23% for a geostructural module. The increase is from 8 to about 23%. The question is, why would you need experts with 180 megawatts of power produced and about 1 gigawatt produced nationally? I believe you'll have to build a couple of more plants to go expert. Would you like to add something? Answer. The capacities are loaded completely. You know, they don't have large capacities for exports, but luckily enough, their long-term vision was sufficient to be ambitious to embark on the export markets. For the upcoming 4 to 5 years, they will be living happily without going to embark on foreign markets. But we should also take a look at real implementations of competing technologies. So this is why this is a must. Right. In this case, let me raise the following issue that was raised during discussion of naval modernization. But no one actually did this modernization for thin film technologies. We have representatives of the Swiss embassy. It turned out that the equipment was not good enough, and by joint effort of my Burger and Hevel, they finally managed to make this equipment operational. So we have a brilliant case that might be interesting for Europe, for companies like Hevel that would like to upgrade the capacities. I believe the module manufacturer Hevel will not be able to do so. Is there a way to build a machinery construction cluster? And will Rosnana deal with that? Answer: I understand what you are talking about, but in this case, we don't have equipment manufacturers here in Russia. You do realize that this equipment is by my Burger through great effort of Swiss, Russian, and Japanese partners. I am not able to mention others. With the same equipment, with very little additional cost, we are able to create a completely different product. For this type of approach, we are largely interested in the new generation. If we had a strategic Russian mechanical engineering player, we would be able to provide our financial capacities. But our role is not to be a strategic player.
Well, our rule is as follows. The press kits, I think, and we've been scrutinizing that, requires complete change of technologies. We would have to go way over 40% or 45%. That would be very interesting at all, indeed. And there, yeah, well, you would hit the target right away without modernization of the plant. I would like to revert to Igor Shahrai. What is the support you need? Well, we've mentioned a couple of mechanisms. Green financing, is that a way out for you? What would you like? I guess I'm going to talk about the sun more rather than the entire variety of renewables. Definitely the segregation of long-term agreements for installed capacity and for production, and the green tariff, well, that must be more efficient and must work with greater efficiency for the sake of economy and from the standpoint of state-of-the-art technologies. I'm talking about tracker systems which help boost additional production, use of high-tech products helping raise extra revenue, and in addition that should help assure development of research and scientific explorations. If the topic is support, that should help us attain grid parity and attain and approach markets in a systemic manner, then I guess, well, two aspects are important. Firstly, we are not very large companies. I guess I guess you could refer to us a boutique company. Well, some competitors have up to 25 GW each, Asian giants. They produce solar modules too. Well, you may also know that companies in China have enjoyed great support from state-owned funds, and that support has been ceaseless, and well, it goes on and on. And the support never ceases. Another thing to keep in mind, attraction rate, and from the standpoint of world market operations, that rate is extremely high in Russia. That limits our competitive edge. We've been trying to reach international markets with the entire slate of our products: solar cells, modules, EPC, electricity sales contracts. This is what we'll also do in a variety of countries. We have some analytics and data, and we are quite knowledgeable about the ways international solar market operates. But well, in terms of competition, our competitors have 0.5%, sometimes 1%, sometimes their funds are free, whereas for us, in terms of construction of solar farms, well, the level is identical to the world level. But when it comes to support in terms of attraction of capital, then yes, we could use some support. You mentioned clusters. The Ministry of Natural Resources has this strategic product creation of a green cluster. Well, I think alternative energy industry would fit that very well. I mean, if we bring all the components together, the green tariff for extra production, bringing the reducing costs down, attraction rates, a variety of state-of-the-art system, partial redundancy of solar parks, solar farms, to assure balance with conventional energy industry. Well, and then there are taxes and there are jobs, but even without those, that should generate. Well, as Alexei Texler said, that is a task to be pursued by a variety of ministries. Oh, yes, I quite agree with that. And now I would like to turn the floor to Maxim Bystrov. Would you care to comment? Do you need a presentation? Yes, please. Yes, please. Just keep changing, keep shuffling the slides. Well, I heard a lot of interesting and useful things, and I'd like to provide my comments. First of all, I'd like to ask the audience, please raise your hands if you represent large consumers' purchasing power on the wholesale market. One here, one here. Yes, that's what I thought. That's what I thought. So, a couple of words about the Market Council. Why we are here? Well, we are involved in this thrilling story. It is a big challenge to us from a variety of standpoints. Our subsidiary is now tendering to select the things we've been talking about to bring the capex down. And we know this whole success story in terms of reduction of the capex. We have been registering, well, conditional GTPs, and well, that was the beginning. Then we qualify and certify the facilities whose construction has been complete. That's up to the market council from the standpoint of renewables, and we regulate the market. I mean that a large scope of regulatory activities is entrusted to the council by the government, penalizing access to the market, alterations to the market rules. That's up to the council, as you might be aware. And we have a large chamber of consumers. Now, well, they will work in close contact with them. And naturally, well, consumers are concerned with what they're paying for. So how much do they actually pay? They are going to have to pay 1.7 trillion rubles for the entire life cycle of the current program. If we want to be objective, we need to deduct roughly 400 billion, because this we are going to have to work with marginal prices generated by thermal stations with wind farms. So the effect is going to be 400 billion roughly. But even with that 1.3 trillion, that is no nonsense kind of money. So naturally, consumers are concerned about the ways we are going to spend that money. And there is another program. This long-term agreement mechanism is a splendid one. Automatic collection from zones 1 and 2, and 12%. Well, it was very modest, but these days the revenue is quite decent and people are competing for it. And well, so this mechanism is so good. They try to penetrate it, so to speak. Some foreign bodies try to penetrate it. I am I'm referring to the project associated with generating power while combusting solid household waste. The capex of that project exceeds the capex of stations in the West. But there is a variety of countries where they have implemented that. Yes, splendid. Well, that was not within the framework of the contest, but it has taken 375 NW from conventional energy sources. Well, in all likelihood, this is what the country needs, but the government opted for no, they didn't opt for direct subsidies. And that is regional. Garbage is not even a regional headache. That is local municipal headache. Well, it did not. But the government decided to turn to the market. That is not the right thing to do, I think. Another slide, please. What else we encounter? The generation of its capacity is concentrated in regions where it is hardly, the capacity is hardly required. Let me explain what I mean. I'm not going to talk about cola because we are going to have enough time to debottleneck, because bottlenecks sometimes bring the cost of power to zero. So nonetheless, so the southern region united grid system, the situation is rather tense there. And if we construct renewables capacity, we are going to make the problem even more acute. Well, to my right, there are isolated remote systems. That is where renewables generation is required. But unfortunately, the mechanism of long-term agreements is hardly applicable there because, well, you can only target pricing areas. That's the logic. That's where consumers capable of paying are. That's why we target the zones A and 2. And and we're talking about remote areas. Renewables are a must there. We must think about a mechanism to assure that, how best to assure support for the next phase of pursuance of renewables. I could only echo Anatoly. Of course, now that we are midway, it wouldn't be worthwhile to drop everything. Well, if you invite a girl to a restaurant, you have to at least, put her on a cab, because otherwise, why bother? If you know what I mean. So I quite agree with Anatoly. Yes, we did manage to create a cluster. Well, that is a huge accomplishment indeed. And, well, we shouldn't abandon it. We need to have a set of methods. This is what Alexei and Mr. Shahrai talked about. Well, I was quite thrilled to know that, well, they have started to think about the need for subsidies of the rate of interest. Yes, that's obvious. Well, energy folks have done whatever they could. They gathered money from the consumers, and I mean the Ministry of Energy. Now let the Ministry of Industry work. That must be done too. Now, 10,000 MW issue. I guess, well, that's required. Well, I haven't performed any serious calculations, and I've only flipped through the presentation. Well, the clock is ticking. Oh, yes, yes. I guess, 10,000 GW is a must, I think. From the standpoint of support to that cluster and industry and export. But the question is how much that is going to cost. At 5.8 is going to be 1.7 less 400 billion, 1.3. Now that the capex have dropped almost twofold for the sun and for wind, how much that 10 GW is going to cost. With 1.7, we could pursue that, but something inaudible, no mic, no translation. People talking inaudibly. We just need to sit down and do some calculations, because I've heard a variety of forecasts. I've never heard any financial forecasts. But we are energy people, but we are all economists as well. So let us sit down and calculate. And just one more thing to mention, colleagues. How come we feel such great resistance? Because there are consumers. I've started to talk about that. And Anatoly talked about the chain, but he never mentioned the consumers. And while consumers are the main people, or they pertain to the main people category, so the pie is limited, so to speak, and we cannot bake a greater pie. And, DPM2, for modernization of thermal energy, they have their own costs. And we have the one for renewable stimulation mechanism, and this is what we're talking about. That means some costs too, not more than 1.7 less 400 billion. I am so terribly sorry, but I have to interrupt you because, well, if accountants were in charge worldwide, then who would need strategists? You know what I mean? Now let us move on to strategic decisions. That's what we're talking about. But so you can only pursue strategy when you know how much money you have in your pocket. Yes, that's important too. Anatoly, you wanted to say something? Yes, I wanted to talk about strategic solutions, and I wanted to, well, sort of agree with Maxim Sergeyevich. I understand what you say. Believe you me, I'm quite with you, because the Market Council was established to protect the market, which is what you guys have been doing. That is the right thing to do. Now let us get further to the earth. Well, the council includes both representatives of consumers and suppliers. Do consumers care about ways of generation? They don't care whatsoever. Wind, water, solar, they don't care. They couldn't care less. But we need to point out that it's not about new load, it's about the current load. And the current load, well, sure is one of the lowest possible levels, price levels for the industry and for the government. So, well, this country, has not been skimping on energy, so do we need to keep that going? What about renewables for producers? I mean, nuclear plants, wind plants, hydro plants? No, of course not. That means new competition. And now let us think about Maxim. He needs to bring the suppliers who don't want that with consumers who don't care about it. It's fairly hard to maintain a neutral position. A piece of advice: there is electric energy of the country at large. I mean the unified electro energy grid of Russia. That is a world-class accomplishment. So, being energy specialists, let us think about the following. Beyond 2025, does that sector need renewables? In 2020, well, that will be a worldwide peak for coal, 2030 oil, 40 gas, 2040 is gas. So where does Mother Russia go? Well, some people are telling us, well, we are not going to pay one single ruble and, bring prices down. But think about the country, not just about your interest. What is going to happen to this country? The cluster is already there if we fail to protect it beyond 2024 and assure its development beyond 2024. Yes. Well, that is not your term of reference. I agree with that. And you've managed to maintain a balanced position, but let us think about strategy too.
Никакой нанотехнологии не
Thank you. You can still have this flavor of nanotechnology even when you talk about power production. Let me jump in here. We talk about the future. This is about strengthening the voluntary demand. We have consumers who are ready to pay more if they have green powers. There is no way to distinguish electrons into those with green power and conventional energy sources. But we are about to come up with a mechanism to help us satisfy this demand in terms of voluntary customers. Let's now give the floor to Charles as the Minister, please share with us some information. How did that take place in the UK? What support is needed for renewables? What experience can we actually rely on?
Very much indeed. It's a great pleasure to be back at Russian Energy Week, not just because it gives me the chance to share a platform once again with Deputy Minister Texler and Mr. Chabayas and others, but also as President of the Russo-British Chamber of Commerce. I have a mission which is shared by both our governments, that we still, even in times of political difficulty, need to encourage business cooperation and economic cooperation between our countries. And so I want to see not just how we can learn lessons from each other, but how we can deliver that into real commercial opportunities as well. I'm hesitant as a former politician from another country to come here and tell you how to run your system. We've been hearing from you, Alexei Leonidovich, the progress which you have been making. But I would draw a few lessons. First of all, don't believe those who tell you it can't be done. The pace of change which we have seen has delivered more investment in renewables. It has done it faster and has done it more cheaply than anybody believed was possible just 10 years ago. When we came into government in 2010, 5% of our electricity in the United Kingdom was from renewables. We had a target of 30% by 2020, which most people said was impossible. We have hit 30% this year, 2 years early. We have seen the costs coming down dramatically. We've heard that in the examples here as well. But in offshore wind, which is one of our technologies of choice, we've seen the costs come down by 60%. We've seen the size of the turbines going up from 3 megawatts to 10 megawatts, and in time 15 megawatts. And the United Kingdom has moved from somewhere where there was no offshore wind industry anywhere to a position where we are the global leaders. And we have now thousands of people employed in factories producing parts and helping to take forward that technology. And as we then move into an era of floating turbines being pioneered in the UK and elsewhere, then actually areas of the world which can't currently use offshore wind will find it opens up to them. So the pace of change has been greater. I think the way in which we went about having an auctioning process for the support mechanism for the subsidies meant that businesses had to bring their costs down quickly. And that's what's helped to drive that further forward. I think also having a fairly permissive regime whereby the planning rules were made clearer, they were made to be faster for the consenting process, encouraged investors from around the world to come and invest in the United Kingdom. This has not been driven by British money. It's been driven by an enormous contribution from Norway, from Statoil or Equinor. It's been driven now by Chinese money, by money from many different countries. And so it actually hasn't ended up as being a burden on UK payers, on UK consumers. The next point which I would make is that don't believe those who tell you you shouldn't be doing it. Because in an economy like this, which is heavily based on hydrocarbons, you can look at other similar economies. Saudi Arabia, we've been hearing from today. We look at Kazakhstan, heavily investing now into renewables. Norway has always done it. That they are themselves seeing that the future is a combination of using their own renewable power for their domestic generation and domestic energy needs where they can, which keeps the hydrocarbon resources for export as well. Now, clearly, Russia is in a league of its own with the enormity of its gas reserves and its oil reserves. But the two do go hand in hand. And I think one of the most exciting energy challenges in the world at the moment is how you actually bring sustainable solutions to the remote areas of Russia. There are 80,000 remote areas of Russia. For me in the United Kingdom, that is unimaginably large, a huge number. And that the way in which work can now be done to provide sustainable, low-carbon, renewable energy solutions in a way that gives security of supply to those areas, but also does it in a way by driving the costs down, which doesn't have too hard a penalty on consumers, is something which I think you should be absolutely opening that up to other companies around the world to help you address those issues. Because the work which we've done, the work which has happened in all other European countries right around the world, that looking at the scale of the challenge here, it's something where I think you will find that companies are very keen indeed to come and be part of that process.
Спасибо большое.
Thank you very much. Thank you for mentioning remote areas, the so-called hard-to-reach or isolated areas of Russia. This topic is brought up traditionally. Last year, they said that a special fund would be set up, but it's not completely finalized. It was mentioned in the so-called May decree by the president. Our effort with the government was not successful until this decree was signed. Great. I would like to give the floor to Alexei Kaplun. We have leading experts present in this room. Alexei, please comment on the situation. Multiple projects were made in the so-called hard-to-reach, isolated, remote areas. Please hand over the mic to our speaker. There is a national project promoted by the Minister of Energy. This bill was passed in December last year on hard-to-reach and remote areas, the so-called isolated areas. Unfortunately, this sound feed is inaudible. Please hand over the mic to the speaker. Yes. Thank you very much. Indeed, we should understand this problem, and it was clearly mentioned by the President. This was initiated in December. This is a national project on power supply to hard-to-reach and remote areas of the Russian Federation. And one of the tasks we set forth, I'm not saying this is the only one, but this is one of the tasks. This is to rely on support mechanisms we will require to implement such projects. Probably the problem is a bit different from that discussed by the previous speakers. I don't fully agree with Maxim Sergeyevich for one simple reason. In the slide says that the remote areas have all the conditions to make this project self-sufficient. The dozens of projects Alexei Leonidovich mentioned, it takes 1,000 projects. Recording different sources, there are several thousands of such remote areas. And these projects, they still remain isolated cases driven by enthusiasts, and equipment cannot be scaled up because there are no technology companies there to back it up. They can see no purpose, no incentive in that. That's why we do not have a well-developed remote and hard-to-reach areas market, unlike the previous problems you mentioned. What are we talking about? It's not about energy efficiency. It's about the availability of energy infrastructure to consumers, to some areas. Well, reliability does not always mean energy efficiency. When you get down to this paradigm, you will discover new prospects. This will enable the population, the consumers, to have access to infrastructure. In most cases, this will be based on renewables. All other countries already went that way. Take the US, Alaska, for instance. A similar situation is in the north of Canada. In New Zealand, there is a mechanism that stimulates energy companies to follow this approach. We have Decree 47 of the government of the Russian Federation and Federal Law 201 on energy efficiency. And all the projects we're talking about, they presented or this way or that way. The number of projects says that it takes a different approach. Will this be a so-called green tariff for such areas? for such hard-to-reach remote area. Probably this will sound unpopular, but at least ideologically, this mechanism is similar to Decree 895 of the government of the Russian Federation for the Far East. This is about transferring this from one region to another one. Mr. Kiselov was also involved. This is a completely different story. But if we don't do that, personally, I'm so glad that Anatoly Borisovich pushed for this approach, because it requires a systemic, full-fledged, comprehensive approach. But if we make it happen, this will simplify the implementation of projects of this scale. Since you built to us as well, I absolutely agree with you. Moreover, we have a suggestion or a proposal. Let's find out what the rates are somewhere in Chukotka, if it's not subsidized, like 85 rubles for kilowatt hours. It's 40 to 50 rubles. It's a northern territory. In thermal energy, there is this notion of alternative boiler. This is the price at which energy is produced by the thermal station. If centralized heating is more advantageous, we can rely on such long-term tariffs. This might be a simple alternative to a diesel generating capacity. I would agree on giving you a long-term rate so that you break even within 10 years. But let's make this happen. Thank you. Thank you so much. Now, I would like to give the floor to the person who slowly but surely does his work. His name is Andrei Dreizigner. He comes from Switzerland. Please display the slides. He set the following goal. This is Switzerland, not Russia. He conducts a survey on the best possible modules to put in operation, and this is done in two regions, in the suburb of Zurich and in Irkutsk, Russia. Please tell us, what do you do and what is it all about?
George, for the floor. What will I show you here? You see only snow, but there is something down under the snow. Why we do that here also, he told, we have to install an installation in Yakutsk. We do it, we have a similar condition, you see, up in Arosa. It's nearly 2,000 meters up in the mountains in Switzerland. You see we have snow, sometimes we have a lot of snow, you have seen in the first picture. Sometimes we have a very strong wind. Why we take a really strong installation? Why we install it vertical? They are bifacial modules. Why bifacial? The wind, the snow, it's the best reflector, natural reflector, much better than water, much better than sand. But they're also okay. But this one is the best reflector. The CEO of the supplier over in the village told me, please, I know what you want. You want to install PV plants for the summertime. But we have our cable cars and our installation. We need power in winter. You see the roofs beside? We have 80 installations in Switzerland. We are a contractor, we are an association, but we are a contractor on a lot of PV plants. These are last year, they were 5 months under snow, zero production. What helps zero production in wintertime? This one is producing very properly with the albedo effect, and that is the same situation which you have and in the Arctic region, remote areas. And you have another opportunity. We see then on the next pictures. Here we have a very good result, and this is an installation, the same installation with the 6 20-cell bifacial modules on the rooftop in Yakutsk. Deeper temperature, less wind, less snow, but you have much longer time snow than we have in Switzerland. We will test it on the last, I cannot show it now to you. On 1st October we have a perfect module. We have not this lunchtime peak with these modules, we have an M. It starts very early in the morning, and this M, I mean the day production, it's much closer to the consumption than this classical east-west and south angle PV plants. With this one we want to show it is another opportunity. We have to think out of box. And this installation, this technology is also useful if we make another installation. We are working on hanging modules for agro PV and in the towns for grey land, park places and so on. We have to think on not to have this type of tunnel view with PV is there, wind is there. No, we have to use the soil. You know, I came from a small country, but an innovative country. We have to look about our soil, but you have to do the same. Sometimes, I tell you something from the fruit production about agro-PV. The apple tree, especially with the last months, which we have very hot days in middle of Europe, they stop their production on lunchtime. It's not a joke. If you give them a little shade, they are better, more productive. Why we not to think over the border, crossover, and find new solutions? For that, I'm happy to have partners like here on the panel to go this one further. We have a lot to do. We have to not to use only glass modules, but we need glass modules. But we will go technology in another way, and then it's only to do it with partnerships. We don't need, the Chinese products. You have technologies here. We have it in Switzerland. There is a company who is working with the technologies together. Let's do it, make the next steps together. And we have installed from our association this thing with partners locally, without money from research side. We do something in Switzerland, but not here. Please do it together, and then we will have good success, especially for remote areas. We can make temporary installations for these regions, especially up in the very north. Thank you very much for the platform, George.
Спасибо большое, Андреас. Я, кстати, хочу...
Thank you so much. I would like to mind that this gentleman is not married, so this is for the ladies present. I would like to give the floor to a very representative person. This person represents SAFTA company, the Executive Vice President for Transportation, Telecom and Grid Soft Group SA. These are rechargeable batteries. This is part of the Total company, which is indeed very important. Take into account your experience working here in Russia. I believe you can answer the following question. How should we structure our work regarding components? This could be done in Russia, inside of Russia, in cooperation with a company like you. Please.
Yeah, hello everyone. Thank you, George. Thank you for the opportunity to address this great panel. So as you said, so I'm representing SAFT. So SAFT is a 100 years company. We've been in the business for 100 years. We've been doing business in Russia for 55 years. We started with the first battery in 1963. That was for a shunt loco. And after this, we've been the pleasure to develop beyond rail, taking our batteries in aviation, in your space industries, and also in oil and gas. Before we were acquired by Total, the acquisition of Total was quite recent, 2.5 years ago. And this is giving us a great push towards more energy, and particularly what it means in the value chain to provide storage in a energy solution. So we are now very pleased to introduce in Russia our storage solutions, and Mr. Chakre was kind enough to mention the work that we're doing together, and that we hopefully will have our first storage container installed in the first quarter of next year. And that is something that is really the way we want to work at SAFT, is that we have components that we've deployed worldwide, that we have worked with all our experts internationally, and that we are happy to work with companies in Russia so that we can share what we've learned and help you make the impossible. I think what you said is very true. I mean, technology goes always faster than when we think. And this is by sharing the experience of everyone across the world that we can make it even faster. Now, when you go into renewable power, as you are doing here, and all the examples that you're doing of pushing to have more renewable energy in Russia, create opportunities to connect the remote areas, and that allows us to, get into greener energy. I mean, we can always do this using gensets, but gensets require a lot of gas. I mean, this is not necessarily the most acceptable energy those days. And as we connect those with renewable solutions, be they what you do in Switzerland here, and I wasn't aware about your approach here, but it's very, very smart, very innovative. I really like this. Or other type of solar panels or wind solutions, we can see that by connecting storage, we can make a much better job at switching sources, at managing the frequency issues that we are creating into the microgrids and making really efficient solutions. Now, we can do this in remote areas, but as you also connect those big wind farms or solar farms to your main grid, I mean, this is also creating a lot of disturbances in those grids. I mean, frequency is much more difficult to manage. You can also have situations where you produce in a certain location, but the consumption is another location, and taking all those electrons from one place to other place creates congestions on your grid. So storage containers will help you manage this type of issues. So at SAFT, we have those components available. We are looking for partners to deploy them, make them available in Russia, because we completely understand that we cannot do it on our own when we need to be very close to your own economical and way of doing the business. Sometimes you also need your help to make us understand, how we need to have our products qualified and make them acceptable for the Russian market. So we are definitely looking for developing more of these relationships. As I said, we are now doing it for energy storage solutions, but we've done it already with the rail market, right? We've worked with a lot of your suppliers here, with your aviation industry, and so on and so on. So we are looking forward to replicating this for this storage energy systems. And once this is done, when we have the solutions working for Russia, it is also our pleasure to help you if you want to export, because we are present internationally. Right? SAFT is over 4,000 battery experts worldwide. We have sites in 30 different countries, and if it makes sense, we can continue work internationally and not just in Russia or in the neighboring countries of Russia. So thank you for giving me that opportunity of sharing this with all of you. Thank you very much.
Спасибо большое, Hervé.
Thank you so very much, Hervé. I would like to ask Alexei to sponsor this issue, because our colleagues and the communities, well, in our non-commercial partnership, we have made some attempts to pursue these projects, but, well, with our unified energy system, UES, that was easier, but these days with Hydro, it is sometimes quite hard to seek mutual understanding. So you should possibly pay attention to that. Now I would like to turn the floor to another novice. You know, it's our tradition to bring new faces. Well, last year it was Enel. Anatoly, you might remember that, but the generators are yet to be constructed, so they have no accomplishments to report. People talking simultaneously in Russian. Okay, I just reported to Mr. Putin that they have entered the renewables market. They have, but we invite people with accomplishments here, such as Mr. Shahrai or Mr. Chuaev. And we have this NG company. You guys are a huge corporation. What is it that interests you in Russia? Unless I'm much mistaken, you pursue hydrogen technologies. Ladies and gentlemen, I give you William Kupols, Senior Business Developer for Russia.
English. So ENGIE is indeed a big utility. So we are the merger company of Gaz de France and Electrabel, for those who are in energy. We are exploiting, or we are operating more than 100 gigawatts all over the world of power generation. About 25% of that is renewable, but most of it is still currently hydro, so mainly in France, Belgium a bit, and Brazil and other countries. Currently about 9 gigawatt is renewable, so we are close to the 10 gigawatt of Mr. Chubais in our portfolio. So most of it is solar, about 4,000 megawatt or 4 gigawatt is wind. Will be 50% of our renewables, so about 12 gigawatt will be solar and wind at the end of next year. We are developing a lot of projects all over the world, so I think we build up quite some experience in especially how to be competitive in tenders. So that's because in most parts of the world now it's tender system. So of course cost of capital is very important, and having the good turbine purchasing in terms of wind and solar. Also, what is becoming and will become very important in Russia is to be competitive, not only on the capex on the project side, but also on the operations of the plant. So optimizing the design to squeeze out the best performance. I think one example that we have recently done in Spain is that we are developing a project in Spain of 300 megawatt in wind without any subsidy. So no tender, just we found the sites and we financed it without any subsidy. So we hedged forward on the power markets the price. We went to the banks. We said, okay, this is how we can hedge the power prices. It's a very complicated thing. I think we did over more than 250 contracts only for the hedging and the financing. But it works. So 300 megawatts, no subsidy in Spain. And that's the future. So, but then you have to squeeze out every part of the project. And I think in the UK, it's getting the same way. It's going the same way. So, but then you have to know the whole phase of your project until the end, the lifetime end of the turbines or the panels, and be competitive on each part and be creative. I like the standing panels or the vertical panels a lot. I mean, it's a very good way of being creative in every part of the project and be competitive. So, well, we are for the time being not present in Russia. So we made basically our CEO, who changed the strategy of our company very strongly towards renewables about 2.5 years ago. So we are moving now. Every year we're investing more than 1 billion euros in renewables, alternative energy. So we're clearly on a completely different direction than before. And we know Russia basically from Gazprom. We are buying 12 BCM per year from Gazprom. We are in Nord Stream 1, Nord Stream 2. So last year our CEO said, but well, let's have a look at Russia and what is happening there, because there are things happening in renewables. So we are looking how we could contribute in one way or another to what is happening in the market. One other aspect of, because George asked me to speak about this, is about storage. So storage is becoming very important in the systems where the renewable supplier is completely responsible for balancing, and that's the case in most in more and more countries, so including for hourly balancing. So then storage becomes much more important. We are investing we just recently set up a business unit that is fully dedicated to hydrogen. So firstly, because it enables you to, with renewable energy, so green energy, whatever it is, wind, solar, biogas, biomass, to store it, either to use it for industrial use, so for industrial customers, so directly the hydrogen, or to store it and to use it, of course, when market prices are the highest, which creates a lot of extra value to the product. So we're investing quite heavily in this because it is the perfect fit, or one of the fits. There are different ones for renewables. Thank you.
Спасибо большое.
Thank you very much. We hope to start with you, and then we hope to invite Gazprom as one of the renewables market player. We could dream about that. Now I would like to turn the floor to another representative of a large corporation which never worked in renewables before. Rosatom, Mr. Korchagin. Could you touch upon external markets, because you have a lot of experience in that area? Yes, good afternoon, dear colleagues. When you speak in the end, it's hard to add anything new, but I'm here to tell you I could echo what Alexei said. The Russian wind energy market has indeed been conceived, and the scopes will be there. That means a great success of all the parties concerned. Anatoly Chubais said that we need some serious program solutions and decisions to support the cluster. I'm going to talk about wind for the most part. But I think there is another important issue here in terms of decision-making, industrial policy, and setting of new goals and tasks for the program. We try to localize 3 towers we're going to research and develop some specific superconductors or some new technologies. I mean, new program must have very specific goals and tasks rather than vague declarations. The project has been conceived. And another important aspect to touch upon. I am very proud that I started my professional career in TGC number 5. That was the first company to undergo an IPO, and Mr. Chubais has cast some impact on my life and career. But professional investment analysts, professional lawyers, well familiar with not just Russian law but international law, people who developed regulations. Well, they need engineering, experts and so forth. We're quite a lot of pinpoint experts and subject matter experts. Let me tell you why I mentioned that. In Rosatom we made a decision to turn to wind energy 2 years ago, and well, the task was as follows. Russia has a good market, and we need to acquire some experience. We need to pursue projects, especially international projects. especially in areas where Rosatom has been pursuing nuclear medicine, but the picture has changed worldwide. The cost of turbines dropped, and yet, there have been no technology breakthroughs, and the revenue of large manufacturers has dropped by 30%. And these days, large customers of wind energy projects are large energy companies, but we are getting more and more corporate support mechanisms when corporations order captive wind farms. And well, this is what we've been seeing in Europe and in other well-developed countries. Well, even farmers will do that. They act in the capacity of customers. Municipal, some localities invest in wind farms. They invest and then they just generate cash flows, assuring their realization. All that constitutes new challenges. And we see that the DPM model has become a subject of auctions, and solar and wind compete with conventional generation. We have witnessed rather ambitious triumphs on the part of securing footprint by wind energy. So we are now agreeing this international strategy in Rosatom. By the end of the year, it will be approved and it will meet all the requirements. It is impossible not to mention the following. There are some serious issues associated with financing packages we have to work with, and I guess we have a variety of specialists capable of working with Ministry of Trade and Industry and Ministry of Finance. That is why we need to, when we need to subsidize, we think which ministry we turn to. But we are about to establish a group of specialists capable of working with foreign pension funds and non-governmental financing organizations. Whatever is associated with the challenges, when we talk about how best to access international markets, I'm not, when I started this project, I had a group of guys from conventional energy. Well, it didn't work. I had to change the team almost completely. And specialists, these days I have quite a lot of people from aviation, aircraft industry and automobile industry. So it's not about technology you have these days, because in the wind sector all the technologies are equally good. People talk about after-sales support. What kind of services do you offer? How long does it take you to nurture your human resources? How much would accessibility of this such and such turbine cost? So, from the standpoint of unlocking Russia's potential, I guess we need to put a lot of effort in the selection of efficient business model.
And regarding localization, at Rosatom, it took us a long way to go. Our atomic and nuclear energy mechanical engineering is pretty good, but we decided that we will be localizing complex, expensive generators, but with a huge export potential. So we need people capable of setting up mass production. And we have to build adequate, fit-for-purpose business models, adequate personnel policies, so that we can build up a strong team and embark on international markets. If we make it to the international markets and are successful, I believe, in this case, there will be a sporadic or controlled localization. It will be taking place not as requested by the Ministry of Commerce and Industry, but rather in business terms. That would be it for me. Thank you. Charles, I believe you worked with Rosatom as well. Did you want to add something?
It's a general observation, which is I think that if we had been sitting here 5 years ago, the focus of our discussion would have been the resources. Where were we going to find the next set of resources which we would need to deliver our energy solutions? Yet the theme running through today's conversation is about technology and innovation. And I think the future is more now about technology and innovation than it is about finding the actual resources. The work where Russia, I think, has an incredible advantage is in terms of the work which is done in innovation and technology in your universities, in places like Skolkovo. It's something where you have a wonderful tradition going right back into the Soviet Union, but which has been maintained today. And you also have in this room companies like Engie, companies like Saft through Total, and other sort of smaller ones like the ones which I'm with, where we would have a real desire to work with you to help to open up some of those technologies and some of that innovation. Because I hope it's not disrespectful to say that you've done brilliant work on the innovation and the invention, but you've not always been able to commercialize it as quickly or as effectively as happens in some other countries. And so bringing in some international partners to help to drive that program forward would, I think, be an area where it brings huge wins for Russia. You keep the ownership here, you keep the wealth creation here, the jobs come here, but you actually then use some of the might and the strength of some of the other international partners to speed up that process and make it happen more quickly. Russia should be at the heart of global innovation in the energy sector.
Спасибо, Чарльз. Я хотел бы
Thank you, Charles. I would like to add that you represent a large investment company here in Russia, London Power Corporation. This is the company investing into the energy sector in multiple energy sector projects in Russia. Is that correct?
We're just starting on that journey, and so our background has been an oil and gas company in the United Kingdom. I head up for the company, what we call our future energy company, which is looking internationally with a particular focus on Russia, where we can find the right partners and the right people to deal with. We're all people who enjoy Russia, who respect Russia, who admire the heritage and history of this country, and who are coming here with our eyes open. Our chairman is David Peaty, who was the head of BP Russia for 5 years, and a number of us on the board have had long histories of association with Russia and the wider region. And so, yes, absolutely, we're keen to develop those opportunities. We're just starting at the beginning of that process. We're very happy to have conversations after the meeting.
Спасибо. У нас как раз в завершении есть пара инвесторов.
To finish off, we would like to address Fortum, Alexander Anatolyevich Chuvayev. I would like to give the floor to you. In the first place, I would like to thank you. Well, a lot of people talk about large consumers. I would like to thank you as a small consumer, because you made a miracle happen. You initiated the process of price decrease at a tender stage. This is a great piece of news. And hopefully, as mentioned by Alexey Anatolyevich, this situation will further improve. I have one question, which is this. When we talk about Fortum, Fortum is not only about renewables. You have 9 gigawatts of thermal energy available. So this is the bulk of your potential. At the same time, you're now a wind company, a solar energy company. What is your take of your future strategy? What is the crucial point for you? As we are an energy sector company, and energy sector companies are usually those who do asset management, our assets should yield a result. Of course, we don't have 9 gigawatts of power. We have 4.3 of installed capacities and about 10 gigawatts of thermal power available. Regarding the thermal part of our activities, we have newest assets. Over 95% of assets are new ones, and so we have about 65% of new assets, and assets older than 30 years account for only about 15%. That happened long before DPM2, the so-called document. I would like to point out the following. There are global trends, and in this regard, as mentioned by the President, there is no way to isolate Russia, as Russia is well embedded into the world financial system, into the supply chain of energy sources, and so on and so forth. That's why there is no way to isolate Russia with any sanctions. It would be a very difficult thing to do. The same holds true for energy trends. The energy industry undergoes a transformation towards renewables. And the state wisdom in a country such Russia, with such reserves of hydrocarbons and an excess of thermal generation, was this. DPM for renewables. This program is being implemented. If you travel to the region of Ulyanovsk, it was an automotive manufacturer and other industries. But the landmark is the first wind farm, the first industrial-grade wind farm commissioned last year. In late 2017, it gave the first output of energy. Now it is being paid for the DPM terms. If we talk about the Russian territories, and if we take a look at this power station, it becomes clear that this state wisdom was implemented in real hardware. I would like to point out the following. The majority of Russian consumers actually do not care about where the energy comes from. Western companies, mostly these consumers, come to us and say the following. Let's enter into a long-term energy supply contract as we want to receive green energy. We don't want to run on energy taken from fossil fuels. This class of consumers will be growing, and there is no way you can possibly overlook that. I would like to support the position of a colleague of mine from Rosatom. The Energy Development Foundation established 1,823 megawatts. These are the capacities we're supposed to commission, and this is serious. By 2023, the last phase of commissioning is scheduled for 2023. I would like to assure the Minister of Energy, represented by First Deputy Minister of Energy, this will definitely be implemented, no doubt, but energy runs in long cycles. What do we find pretty concerning? The DPM for renewables finishes in 2024, and consumers, the bulk of them, don't actually want to pay for anything, and if they have to pay, they want to pay as least as possible. They do not care where the electrons come from. They care about their money and about their costs. There are multiple technologies. Hydropower nuclear, thermal, and renewables. And power generating companies, they lobby their interest. We have this DPM for renewables. In this regard, no doubt, number one is state wisdom, a state-run strategy. This strategy should define a good mix of energy sources in our energy portfolio. This is for the country not to remain in the Stone Age. If we start to invest into technology which is 100 years old to increase the capacities, probably this is not a very good idea. Probably we actually need the equipment, but based on the current market signals, if we have a 20 gigawatts of excess power, this power will not be in demand pretty soon. It's about redistribution of our energy portfolio. Our state should not be lagging behind. Apart from that, I would like to say the following. A pretty important story is this. At present, there are plants being built for the manufacturing of wind turbines. A plant has been commissioned in Ulyanovsk, in this city of Russia, for the manufacturing of blades. This is a joint project of ours with Rusnano. There is an investment project in Taganrog, in Nizhny Novgorod, and other cities. So we have a real investment happening into real feasible, real projects, real university, special purpose, targeted university departments are being established in respective universities. And suddenly, in 2024, everything stops, plants close down, people get laid off, and everything stops at the point it came to 2 or 3 years ago. Consider such a scenario. It's hard to believe in such a scenario. I believe the state will find the decisive power to carry on this program at least for 10 more years. The same holds true for thermal generation. There should be actually wise way to redistribute this portfolio across technologies so that we have a pretty good generation portfolio which is in a good shape. This will ensure the country has all the necessary technologies for a transition period taking place today in the energy industry without losing our human capital and our personnel. That's point number one. The second point I would like to make is this. Every nation has its symbols, like Switzerland has mountains, snow, Swiss wristwatches, Russia has Koklama painting bears, MiG-35 aircraft. For those who are in the know, DPM is also a relevant mark. This method of attracting investments, it turned out to be so good. Now I'm talking about this as a representative of a foreign investor. This went international. You might come up with other solutions for isolated systems, but as long as DPM works, we should not be reinventing the wheel. This approach turned out to be successful. It's been there for over 10 years and still there. It carries on existing. Apart from it, not only does it survive, it helps to satisfy, to meet the needs of consumers. Figures were already mentioned. We cut capex by 40%. by 25% at the first auction and by 15% more at the second auction. This is about the price of attracting investment and money. Sometimes we don't have the best technology, construction, and operation regulations. Under these norms, we have to have people on our wind station. We are not able to manage this facility remotely, and this all results in higher costs. The DPM mechanism is pretty successful. In terms of solar power, Fortum won 110 megawatts, and this is a highly competitive industry. Very few people know that. I'm going to reiterate that if you build a non-localized power plant, you only get 50% of a DPM, not 100% of DPM. The solar power became so inexpensive that even if the DPM conditions drop by 50%, we still get a profit. It will be advisable to build a power station, and that for Mr. Shachrai and our suppliers is sufficient to win an international tender. This is going to be an international tender on the Russian market, as we match prices by local suppliers and those by foreign suppliers. I'm fully supportive of that, and Fortum invested about 60 billion euro, and this is a pretty significant number for a small company, and we have extensive expertise in that field. We have a lot to say. When it turned to the Minister of Energy, I'm pretty confident that the government will be wise enough to further the DPM renewables program after 2024. This will be a way to boost the energy sector, and I hope that Ministry of Commerce and Trade and Energy and other bodies of the government in charge of industrial policy, they will have the capacity to further invest into Russian technology, and Russian technology is already there. Even if it's brought by foreign partners, this technology should further develop. We have human capital, human potential. We have everything to make these technologies second to none in the world. I would like to mention the MiG-35 aircraft. India launched a tender for 126 fighter jets, and the French Rafale won the tender. And why did the Russian MiG-35 did not win? Because it is not actually adopted by Russian armed forces. We, like in this case, we would like these technologies to be implemented by the Russian state. This is one more point to reiterate that the program should carry on. We should have a good combination of various technologies. Our country should reach this energy and technology transition, which is at its early stages, without any losses. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Before asking the closing remark, we don't have much time. Alexander Gary, Managing Director of the Eurasia Development Bank. Just 1 minute, please. What do you want to invest in? What have you invested in? Thank you. I'll try to keep it concise. In the beginning, we talk about export potential of technologies localized in Russia for Havel solar system and other technologies. According to our calculations, more than 400 GW per annum is the capacity for them to work irrespective of subsidies beyond 2024. I think there must be an important area to pursue. We need to assure expert capacity. What are you going to do? At the Eastern Economic Forum, we signed a memorandum with Haviland Solar Systems in order to support export of their technologies and equipment to Kazakhstan. That is a market that's really close from the standpoint of infrastructure and its level. And by the way, rates. For rates, we are going to resort to VTB bank tools, and we managed to offer cash for 10 years at competitive rates, which helped our Russian companies to be very competitive in Kazakhstan. Thank you very much. Thank you. That is a very good initiative, and Nikita Selivanov, ladies and gentlemen, Asset Management Director, QBF. You have only 1 minute. What do you want to do? Thank you for the opportunity to speak up. QBF is an investment group. We invest in energy, but we haven't realized a single project in Russia. So we are here to introduce ourselves and engage in a dialogue with you. So since we've run out of time, I'm not going to talk about our problems. There is this country, Iran, and for 2 GW, they got $22 billion worth of investment. I highlighted this because, they are an oil and gas country too. And they are a country that had been subjected to sanctions too, and they don't even have SWIFT. So we see a lot of common with Iran, and we've talked to investors who had invested in Iran. Well, there is a certain understanding. But so now they want to develop together with us their projects. They want to invest in Russia. So we are ready to raise loan capital, especially for export-oriented products, and to do whatever is in our power. Thank you very much. We need more companies like yours in the Russian market. Closing remarks, ladies and gentlemen. I think we had a great discussion today. Every year, the contents become more richer and richer. The extension of the DPM program is a matter we have to consider seriously. We need to have a close look at the pure skid technology. I promised this, and I think we'll pursue this. I'm going to instruct my people to keep pursuing this because I believe in that technology. I think that's a technology of the future, and we are among the very few leaders. So Maxim's proposition is very interesting too. I support him, And with Aarhus Hydro, we have been interacting closely on such proposals, and they are also going to keep pursuing renewables and trying to attain topmost performance because the potential is immense. Thank you so much, everyone. Thank you, all our producers and manufacturers. Next time. Well, I think we should bring consumers over. And well, there is no need to be scared of that conversation. Because, well, there is a saying in Russia that, well, truth is the product of an argument. So that is the most important thing. The government must keep pursuing this. Well, thank you very much. And I would like to say that, well, there is going to be another forum in Ufa on the 23rd, and I wanted to show you this book. That's a global report for renewables. It was published in Russian. So, well, the Higher School of Economics helped us print it. So, well, the copies are available over there. Thank you so much, everyone. See you.